Okay. Let's see if I can get this right. Hello, hello. Let me just pop up a chat. Hopefully my throat is okay today. Because I'm going to try getting through all of the pages that I have left at this point. Okay, I'll start in 1 minute. Ooh, that's not right. Let's just silence that. Okay, I'm gonna start. Let's see, let us review where we left off. So, where we left off was page 36 and 37. And I was talking about paneling the last stream, and I'm going to continue doing that. If you want to ask questions, feel free. I will answer what I can and do my best to continue doing that for the rest of these pages. Okay. So, yeah. Thank you for coming and watching. I believe someone is currently viewing, or was. So, to end off on, we're going to do a bit of review of top right panel, left, bottom, goes here, then goes here, goes this way, and then this is kind of going that way, right? So the panels are, in a sense, again, remember this is the middle of the page, right? This is the spine, and you get some mirroring on the right and left page. This is the same as this, right? In a sense. And then this right here is, in a sense, the same as this, just from a different perspective, from looking from the back, and this is looking at the front, right? And I wanted to do that because, in a sense, I wanted to try kind of having the pages look similar, but having the before and after shots. Because this is the before, right? And this is the after. Just on the page, chronologically, right? Because when you read manga, it's always right to left. But to have it not just read right to left, you can see the reactions coming from right to left too. It gives a stronger sense of, okay, something happened right here, right? In the void, in a sense. And I wanted to imply there's a big change on a page, essentially. Here is its own continuity. This is its own continuity, right? Right here in the middle, this is, in a sense, its own continuity. And whether or not I got across with that, I don't know. But that's the point of trying these things. Because this page, right, Major is just nervous at the end of it. She's still nervous here, right? But the background's different. She's wondering. She's awakening. She's turning. She's waking up. And she's back to reality. And all those things together, I believe, gives a sound idea of change. And change is very difficult to come across. Because trying to describe change within a visual medium is not always the easiest thing to do. But yeah, I hopefully got that across with these panels. And let us go on. So, page 38, right? We get Major waking up. And of course, the speech bubbles are still kind of square. They're not quite there yet, right? I'm still learning the ropes. And in a sense, they're getting there. They're kind of rounded. They're not that good, but I'm starting to learn that, at least on this page, the perspective needs to shift, right? Things are not as flat anymore. And this is a top-down view, right? But the angle is different. It's not straight. Right? Major's not directly looking at the audience anymore, as most of the previous panels show, which is a fundamental difference that I was trying to imply, because I was realizing that even when I was making these manga pages, I was getting comments of, you need to change your perspective. You need to draw things not as flat, right? You need to make things more dynamic. And when I realized that even creating this, right, that my art skills are limiting myself from telling a proper story, it gave me a good shift in my own mindset when I was creating this. And of course, it takes a while to really take in that lesson, right, of shifting away from what you're already doing and progressing a bit further. So, and this is, in a sense, the first part of that, right? I'm trying to, of course, I'm back to doing that because Major's looking at us, right? But Barbara's looking at Major at a slight angle, and she's looking at Barbara at a slight angle. Of course, we still look directly, right? But with the eyes kind of doing this, right? And then doing a hop. I'm trying to still shift the perspective of the viewer. And, you get this, and then this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and then this is 4, right? And of course, this is supposed to be a counter, which the detail's not all there. But, yeah. Oh, back, and after looking at this, you go back here, right? So, of course, speech bubble, that is square, awfully square. Here again, I'm learning how to panel properly and wondering and realizing of why people kind of don't do these kind of things and whether or not I wanted to incorporate more of these things in the future. Cutting a panel in half like this, right, for good reason. I had a thought of Major kind of wondering, oh, this is her, this is her thought bubble, right? And I cut it in a way where I want to emphasize both speech bubbles. I mean, not speech bubbles, but like the thought bubble, and then Major's wondering, right? And then having her have a eureka moment, and further evolving that eureka moment, right? As she stands up due to these insert text. Whether or not it came across correctly, I don't know. But I'd like to believe that cutting this panel in half doesn't really work the way I intend, like looking back. Because you can just keep this panel as one whole thing, right? And just like not cut it. And just be like, hey, right, it looks fine. You don't have to imply two different panels. Two smaller panels does not, in this case, mean better. Like the two parts does not mean more than the whole. So I didn't do this kind of paneling again, which is a good thing to learn, because this is when I saw that it didn't really quite do what I wanted it to do, I didn't go further with it, or in this case, really push for these kind of cutting up small panels already, right? But yeah, so remember, top right, then here, then it's here, then it's here, to the speech bubble, and in this case, it actually does this. So we end off on the page here, but we're supposed to end off on the page here, right? Because you're supposed to go from this to this, right? But in a sense, this page is all over the place, right? You're kind of doing this, and you're ending off on the chair being left open, right? And Major falling towards the audience. So, okay. Ooh, this page is interesting. How do you stay motivated working on this solo? Oh, sorry, I just read this. How do you stay motivated working on this solo? Do you ever struggle with perfectionism? That's a good question. Thank you, Dave, Devi Animations. How do I stay motivated? To be quite honest, it's mostly it's a pursuit of grit. I would put the words, or I would like to put the words in your mind. I'm not trying to stay motivated in some senses, but it's also not in a sense about perfectionism at some point. I wanted to, how do I put this in a way? There's a quote of the journey versus the goal, right? If you only look at the journey to get to the goal, you'll get lost essentially. And if you only look at the goal, you'll hate the journey, right? Because I really thought about, when I was making this, I want something in my hand in a sense of the hard work I'm going to put in, which is, the entire stack of manga pages at this point that I just have sitting right next to me, actually. But how do you stay motivated? Such a good question. I'd use the word, you have to tell yourself you're gonna take steps towards something, right? And for me, of working on this solo, it really is just grit. Like, there's passion there, right? But passion died a long time ago for me, kind of. Like, this is a passion project at the end of the day, of course, right? But what gets you across the finish line is not passion, I believe. It is a large amount of grit. Like 95% of it is grit at that point. Because you're tired. You've been doing this forever, right? But what kept me motivated was just, I love manga. That's really it. It's just as simple as that term. I wanted to kind of show that love. And showing it meant a lot of, fumbling around and not really knowing what I'm doing, right? But it brought a smile to my own face. And it really is just the love for the art that kind of kept me going. So I hopefully answered the first part of the question. The second part, do you ever struggle with perfectionism? That is a good question. Perfectionism is, honestly, it wasn't too bad of a thing for me because I knew from the get-go, right, that I had troubles drawing because I had kind of put it down for a lot of my years, right? So to give some insight, I used to draw when I was very young, and then I kind of stopped drawing. I think around probably middle school, high school, and I really didn't do a lot of drawing besides like doodling, right? But what got me over the hump of not drawing was I had a lot of time when I was in university, in college, and I was tired of just like doing my studies, right? So I had to do something to get away with it, or else I was gonna keep going crazy. Right? You gotta do something else that doesn't involve your studying sometimes, right? And that uh, it reminded me of going back to what kind of brought me comfort, which was drawing, right? And I realized after years of not doing it, my drawings are not very good by my standards at that point, right? So what ended up happening was I had a really objective view of my drawing skills, and I never needed to worry about perfectionism at that point because I knew my art was imperfect. I had years of looking at my art from doodling, right, under my belt, and was just like, hey, it's not perfect, but it's my art. So I'm going to have to run with it. I'm going to have to mold it in a way where I can get it across the line, right? But yeah, I hope that makes sense. And if it didn't, I'll try to answer any more questions that kind of answers the question properly. But yeah, I hope that made sense. Thank you for that question. It's a great question. I'm just not in what's the word? I have morning brain. I just woke up, so it is a bit difficult for me to think about it. Hello. And so back to the page of 40. I believe we left off on Major hitting her head, right? So this is the after panel of that, and Major is, I put this on an angle. It's kind of a bit weird, right? You're looking at it this way, and it's supposed to come down this way, right? Which I did that on purpose of, hey, you start at top right, you end at bottom left corner, right? So you're doing this. Whoop. And then you end on the shadow covering Major's face. So now you have this panel coming in, which is Barber overlooking Major, right? And of course, these panels together, right, are supposed to be a before in reality vision, right? This is what's actually happening in reality inside the universe, right? And this is what Major sees essentially, right? Because of the black background. Hopefully that came across. But yeah, these four panels here are very tightly integrated where, you see Major confused. This is reality, right? and then you get what's in her mind, and then she closes her eyes, right? So in a sense, these, what's the word I'm looking for? These two panels are happening at the same time. These two panels are happening at the same time, but this vertical here, right, is telling you that, hey, this is the before, right? This is the before, and this is the after. And then, oh, that makes sense. You mentioned accepting your drawing ability. Do you worry about it not being good enough for future audiences, or your skill not doing the story enough justice? Oh, that is a deep question. I love that question, Devi. And oh boy. Hmm. You mentioned accepting your drawing ability. Do you worry about it not being good enough for future audiences, or your skills not doing the story justice enough? I'll be absolutely honest. It's already bit me in the butt, which is really funny because it comes back to the idea of exactly as you said, my art not doing the story justice. And it's true. You have hit the nail on the head for me. And I have been progressively showing this to, you know, my friends and especially the people I'm close to, right? This is a big project for me. And it ended up being, right, difficult to get feedback for some people because, it's a very big project at this point, right? Like you can't really ask people who don't enjoy manga to be like, "Hey, can you read these 100 pages?" I know it's 100 pages, but it's a manga that I made, and doing that really told me that when people actually read it, they really care about you. But on the flip side of what I made may be very ugly, please still read it, even though it's not that good, right? That was a thought in the back of my head that kept showing up when I was sending this to everyone. And yeah, uh, I had that thought. I had that thought really. And I'd used the word, I worried a lot about it actually. I worried so deeply about my art not being able to convey the story. And there will be a little panel that I'm gonna go deep into in a little bit because that's coming up that perfectly encapsulates that idea that my art was a bit lacking at this point when I was creating these pages. And that's kind of when my go signal kind of like in the back of my head when I was creating this. Okay, I was telling myself my art's not good enough for this, but you have I kept telling myself that you're growing as a you know person making this, right? You have to have some flexibility with yourself. Your art may not be good, your story may not be perfect, and your panels, you're experimenting left and right with all these things. You gotta give yourself some wiggle room, or else you're gonna go crazy. And back to the perfectionism thing, right? If I stared perfectionism in the face and thought, yeah, I'm gonna keep doing this, right, with perfectionism in mind, I would never have made it past like the 10th page, the 13th page, because I knew my skill wasn't gonna do the story justice even at that point. But you gotta still truck on. You know what I mean? You just gotta keep going and you gotta keep moving forward, regardless of those thoughts. Because when people tell me, you know, I love your art, right? I'm not just flattered. I'm deeply humbled because when I see my art, I think to myself, it's okay, it's ugly. You can evolve, you can do better. don't worry, this is just another step in the right direction. But for them to tell me that that step was already beautiful, it's a deeply humbling experience of not just gratitude, but I'm deeply flattered, and it makes my day. It's like, it's one of those things where it brings a smile to my face. And I don't know what else to say besides, I may not see beauty in it sometimes, but other people do. And I'm like, not too emotional about it, of course, but I'm like, it almost brings a tear to my eye. That, like, because, when you make something, right? When you make something with art, especially, and you consider it, as I do, like kind of a bit more harsh. It's ugly, but for people to find it beautiful, I'm like, you ain't seen nothing yet. I'm gonna try wowing you, because if you think this is beautiful, I'm gonna work towards a future that you can even from my eyes, I can truly say you believed in me. And I was like, thank you, because I'm gonna keep trying. I'm gonna keep going farther. But yeah, I went on a weird tangent there, but I hope that answered your question. But yeah, so again with top, we're gonna go back to this page. So top, middle, bottom, right? These are happening consecutively, right? And that's on purpose. That was me trying to tell, in a way, of like, this was me experimenting for at least this page, right? These two panels, and this one panel, they're all connected in one space, right? And this is the panel that connects them, because, the border here goes away, right? And then you get major here, right? On the same panel of Barber. And that is a design choice that I really was experimenting with, of how do you have two separate worlds, right? That's what panels are all about. Two perspectives when you cut them apart like this, right? This right here is almost more important than the panels themselves. I know it sounds crazy, but these panels, right, are just, lenses to look through, right? So I use the term, like, imagine this is my thumb, right? And this is the finger. And then, you might see this in like old directing movies, right? Where the director's like, doing this. Thank you. I'm really inspired by your consistency. I'm still learning how to do what you're doing despite thoughts of not being good enough. It's very hard, but you help me see it's possible. Thank you so much for that comment. I want to give you the same amount of love, and give me a second to do that. Devi, you will find consistency in yourself, not through just those thoughts, because those thoughts will actually make you stronger. That's why I believe when you tell yourself the journey and the goal is what you're going through, and to mix, like, to have a good balance of that for yourself, right? To get to the goal, you have to look to the journey too. Having both of those in your mind while still moving forward is what will help you evolve further. Because that's really what this is. We're just getting better at whatever we enjoy, right, in this lifetime. And I'm glad that came across. It's deeply humbling to have somebody say that. Thank you so much. Lost in thought. Let me try to get back on track. Right. So, this is the hand, right? So imagine your left hand in front of you, just in front of you, right? And then, you have your other hand over here, right? And this is what old directors used to do. And this is what I was thinking of the whole time, right? This is your I believe this is your left hand, right? Yep. And this is your right hand. And this is every panel here. Remember that. Every panel here is me just like, I was doing this in my mind the whole time of, when you look at a panel, you can't just look at it from a single perspective, because this is just a chosen perspective of what I was trying to show to the audience, to you, right, to your eyes, because your eyes are over here, right, you're looking at the screen of like, you're jumping back and forth of here, then here, then here, then here, and then here, right, and then you're ending off here. And I was thinking about that at this point, because I had already created, this is this right here is already the 40th page, right? And I was getting quite good at understanding of paneling isn't paneling in some sense of the word. Paneling is the overarching, like, encapsulation of the whole topic. It is the circle in the Venn diagram, right? But there's a little circle within it that fits perfectly inside. And I believe at that point, what I was trying to get at was not just paneling, but what, movie creators, the guy with like the big horn and horn in his hands, and the beret or whatever you would call it. You're directing the audience's eyes. You're a director at that point. Sorry. And I started having that shift of mentality of, oh, when you're trying to be a manga artist, you're actually not just like taking, because at this point I was thinking manga is really just a story and an artist, right? Combining those two loves together, right? And those are already separate arts to begin with. But within those two arts, there is what bridges the gap, right? So imagine this is the story, right? And this is the art, right? So this is the art, and this is the story. Yes? And what bridges the void in this case, right? Just like the spine here, is, right here, right? There's a bridge right here. And that's the directing, right? In this case, it's just called paneling. The paneling, if, that's the paneling. And if the paneling's not good, right, you're gonna see it immediately, because bad paneling makes a manga so much worse to read, because everything's jumbled and all over the place. And man, I have read enough manga to be like, if manga is hard to read on a single page, it makes the experience horrible for the audience. And I remember when I read those type of manga, even when I was young, and I didn't get it, because I went back to read it as an adult and I still didn't get it, right? I didn't get what they were trying to get at with these panels and these pages. And it made me realize they didn't do a good job. So I had that in the back of my head when I was making this. I was like, I need to make this clear. I need to do my best, at least, to make this clear, whether or not that came across. But it is one of those things where I had to think about it, even like, on page 40 of all things, right? Page 40. And I had been doing these, like, imagine this was the 40th step that you're repeating, in a sense, right? 40th time you're doing something. Like, this was my wake up call, in a sense of like around this time, not exactly page 40, right? But this is around this time of like, I was having a shift in mentality, and you'll see it in the rest of the pages where the perspectives kind of change, right? I was looking to make things smaller, make things bigger, have these weird shots, right? Of like, where am I shifting the audience's eyes? And it all starts here. I'm just saying. It starts a bit earlier, of course, but it starts with other people telling you that I want to see more from you, right? And kind of meeting their expectations, in a sense. Not, exactly having their expectations as your goal, of course. But, they're providing some feedback. And if it's true, you kind of ask yourself those questions of, is this actual feedback, or is this person just making fun of me, right? Especially on the internet. And I was like, I had those thoughts, of course. But yeah, it is wonderfully, wonderfully complicated. This whole process was a deeply humbling perspective of myself and trying to do something and not quite doing it in the beginning and maybe doing it at the end. And I'll get to that. I will try to get through the rest of the pages today, because I am not trying to cut this stream off again. So, yeah. Thank you for the question. It brought a lot of memories of when I was doing this. I think I made this page 40 and page 41. I think I made this page almost a year ago to date. But, yeah. Give it a month or two. But, yeah. Okay. Would you be interested in talking about your project on Discord with me sometime this weekend? Oh, I may not have time this weekend, honestly, but to talk about the project on Discord, I may have to hold off on that for a bit, but I'm not opposed to it. I have talked to people on Discord about these things. I am, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm always wary about, just going into DMs with people on Discord, right? So I'll have to say no for now, but not no for the future, if that makes sense. Because I'm doing a lot of things still and trying to patch up my patch up all the things I'm still missing. So I'll have to get to that too. But yeah. But if you do have questions, you can actually take this time to, what's the word I'm getting at? If you have any questions right now, bring them up. I will do my absolute best to answer you, because this is what this stream is all about. Just me yapping and doing my best to take a Q&A as I yap through. Okay, let's see. So we ended off on this panel, right? And, this turns in, there's no blurred line in, there's no in between now, right? This right here is gone, because this whole panel is one bit, right? It has been bridged, essentially. And you get major, and then you get and then barber. And you get a foot right in the middle. Yeah, that is on purpose. And, major swings her leg, and you'll see this action effect. I forget what they're called, but it's just a reaction. And, you get to the next page, right? You're like, oh, what's that? What's happening here? And this is meant to be small, right? And this is meant to be big for good reason. No worries. I'll try to drop in here for the next stream. Sure, yeah, feel free. And thank you for showing up. I deeply appreciate it. So this is on purpose. Small, then big, right? This is just this is me experimenting on perspectives, paneling, directing, whatever word you would like to call it. That is what I'm trying here, right? Because I was slowly gaining the tool set, I'd use the word, to experiment with, which is really interesting. And as I was seeing myself progress with this tool set, right, I was like, oh, I started finding new avenues and exploring those avenues of I'm at whatever step I'm on, and things like windows are opening up, doors are opening up, and it's a very interesting thing. Of, at least for this part, I was thinking to myself, oh, I could do this now. Oh, I could try this. And that's how I got to these kind of panels, right? Where this is a, it's kind of stepped back, right? And then I wanted to step forward, and then I want to combine those perspectives here in a sense where, this is stepped forward, but this is more stepped in and this is more stepped in, right? And it's kind of like this, right? The arrow gets smaller as you go in, right? Your perspective at least, right? And then this is still flat, right? But then I want things to be clear. That was in my back of my head. So he's reaching into his pocket, right? And remember, uh, at least for this part, remember the center of the panel, right, is where the bullseyes is. It's where these two lie, right? Your eyes, right? These are your eyes, and it always ends here in every single panel, right in the middle, and that's just how paneling works. Right here is the bullseye, right here, right in dead center, and as someone who understood that at this point, I was like, ooh, I have to center all my drawings, right? And obviously, right, this was kind of the center. Like, you'll shift it up and down, right? You're not always going to get dead center on all your panels. And in this case, right, the dead center would be on Barber's nose here, like the tip of his nose. And in between these two glasses frames, being broken apart, is the nose in clear view, showing that in this previous panel, it was cut in half by Major, right? Again, with the before, obviously. Or does that, I wouldn't say obviously, I should cut that. Before and after, this is what I was trying to do, right? Before and afters, and then continuation, and then you get to this is the setup, and then this is the continuation, and this is the continuation of the continuation, right? And in this case, it's just Major kicking, glasses break, glasses fall on floor. A reaction to that is Barber reaching into his pocket, whips out new pair of glasses, puts on new pair of glasses, right? There's a reason why he had to have a glasses change, and this is the setup to get to there, right? Just how storytelling works, right? You have to have a step one. In this case, you have to have a step, like, imagine this is step one, right? To get to step, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is, whoop, sorry, I have a doorbell. I will be right back. That jump scared me. Okay, I'm back. I am very sorry about that. Had to get the door. So, what was I saying? Right. So, imagine this was step one, right? And then you have to end on step 6. It is all a part of, steps. And if this is, if step 6 is your goal, right? And step 1 is over here. And remember, these steps go on forever, right? They go on forever. wherever you want to take your audience, right? And remember, over here is not the end. This is like 0, then there's -1, right? So you go up, 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 and you end here. So, hope that makes sense. Let's go for 2, for 3. Oh boy, I am taking a while on these. I may actually have to do a third stream about this. I'm gonna try my best to get through all the pages today, but I will, if I want to be more robust and more detailed about it, it may end up being a third stream about something else. But yeah, I do have ideas of many other stories I want to tell, but streaming the thought process and the creation process of it may not be exactly fun as a stream, but it may be interesting to some people. But we'll see even if that makes any sense, right? So yeah, let's see where I'm at. Okay. So, references. And again, speech bubble, that's not really a bubble. It's kind of square-ish. At this point, I'm not getting the, the speech bubbles that I want, right? And I remember being told in a comment of something. And I remembered, oh, speech bubbles are circular, not square. So in this case, this is the first time that I really thought about, okay, for all future speech bubbles, they will be actual bubbles. And this is the last kind of square weirdness that we get. But yeah. Also, references to Fista North Star, if anybody got that. I am old, and not that old, but I am old enough to be like, I have seen a lot of anime and manga, and these references are just for a bit of an older audience that might get it. Just fun little Easter eggs. But yeah. So, Barber wants an apology for the, so this would be step 7, or in this case, it would just be the next step, right? Next step in the panels so Barber is staring literally down on the, right, of, I want an apology for breaking my glasses, and Major is puffing her cheeks, right, nice and cutely, and, he takes it back immediately because there's something happening in between here, right? And it's not really conveyed to the audience of there's a change in the facial expression, right? And part of that is storytelling in a what's the word I'm looking for? It's not purely text. And that's the point of the text supports, I'm gonna say this always, but the text in this case, right, is one side of the equation, and the art is the other, in manga at least, right? And what they're holding up is the story. Both of these serve as braces for each other to tell a better story. And in this case, what's happening in between here is the changes of facial expressions. Remember that this is just a sliver in time, chosen by myself to try to tell this story properly. Well, not the cable cross like that. Who knows? But yeah. So Barber's face changes into not as stern as he was here. And this is just me trying to be funny, comedic effect that may or may not have come across, right? And you know, Barbara immediately backpedals due to Major being horribly stressed in the situation of wanting apology out of her, right? And Barbara's like, "Oh, only if you want to." And fourth wall break. I know this is a bit weird, but Major looks at you deeply into your eyes, right? Imagine your eyes are right here. He's looking deep in your eyes, and just fun fourth wall breaks of. I want to do that just as a bit of a reference to American comic books, and just a fun bit of nothingness with that. I realize a lot of manga doesn't do fourth wall breaks unless like they really really want to, and American comic books love their fourth wall breaks with their crazy characters, and just like not staying within the confines of their pages, right? Their panels. And in this case, this is just the author for me is asking you a question directly. Should I? Should she apologize? And of course, you find the answer to that on the next page, but it's one of those things of just the little tidbits that are added in to kind of give this story flourish. And I deeply enjoy characters' eyes. I didn't draw eyes very well for like the longest time, and I had to get much much better at them as time went on. And eyes tell a lot of the story, especially since you're reading it with yours, right? So yeah, Major looks at you right here, at you, and then she looks down, right? Before, after, and oh, actually, A and B and A. Just this would be one, and this was two. Let's try that. Right, one then two, and then Major's kind of down, right? And I wanted to emphasize her being down in this page with the dark background here, with these lines kind of shifting away from that, and these stress markers kind of similar to this, right? And of course, we're looking over Barbara's shoulder here, and this is when I was really thinking to myself, I need to change up the perspective. I can't look, make you guys look at the panels front and center always. So, this is kind of pointing to the right. This is kind of pointing the body to the left, but the eyes pointing at you, right? There's a lot of slight tweaking that I had to do. And I had to learn not a lot of perspective drawing, but I had to change my own thoughts to kind of get to this just next page, because I was just trying to do a little better. But yeah, Barbara's over here, right? And now you get actual speech bubbles. Absolutely love it. None of this anymore, hopefully, right? You'll see some of that, but I do. So this is very manga-esque. This is the representation of the whole character's face, low mustache, right? So whose speech bubbles is who, and that's why you have the lines, right? The tails to indicate who's talking. But yeah, Barbara's off screen, and I needed a way to represent that, and the little mustache here is a quick and simple way that I took from other mangakas' way of telling a story, and did that. I love the little mustache, or the little caricatures that kind of represent the character in a broad sense. how I see Barber is just his mustache in some sense. If you distilled his whole character down, it's this right there, and that's the speech bubble. Like I was thinking about making his glasses, but I was like, it doesn't make too much sense. So I kept it as his facial defining feature, which is his mustache. But yeah, so Major's on the ground, and she has her, I believe this is called a barber's cape, right? I had to look up a lot of things when I was making this, and this is called a cape apparently. So interesting stuff. And this is a this looks like a plain white tee, but we'll get more detail in the future, hopefully. But yeah, Major down on the ground, looking upwards, right? And still looking upwards, of course, but she stands right up, right? Remember, vertical height makes a difference, and this is panel 1 and panel 2, of course, right? Doing this, of course. But there is a great difference of there's verticality to your panels too, and I wanted to show that, at least in here, right? Because she's on the ground here, but the ground is way lower here now, right? So, but if I just made them the same height here, you wouldn't really get that. So, in the space of where the bubbles would be, here, there's no bubble. But Major is taller. And that's on purpose. It's just me trying different things, of course. But, yeah. This was me just trying to make Major taller and kind of imply that she's literally standing up, even though she was sitting in a bit, like just before this. So yeah, trying new things. And this is actually, I want to talk about this. And if you look at the episodes, you'll see there's a redo, actually. One of the more interesting things that happened with this. And this is the original page of it. And this is the redo page, actually. If you did not know that, this page is not the first one. This one is the first one. This is the second one. And you can kind of see there's slight differences in how the pages go. And in this case, more square shoulders, more flowy shoulders, right? More like Barber's cape is still on, Barber's cape comes off, Barber's cape is over here, this is more draped over here. I actually like this panel better if I could take this and just like copy paste it in, right? And then this is looking like this, right, from the bottom left to right, but this is more like looking this in, and the back of Barber's hand is in the center of the panel, right? Just a lot of micro shifting that I had to do when I was redoing this page, and you can see it. You can just see those slight tweaks to try doing better. And I know that I like this panel better. I wish I could have just copy and pasted it, but the face is more zoomed in here, right? So you can see the details a bit better, and there's a purpose to that, right? You know, the lines are more square here, and the black is more full here, and there's a purpose to that, because the lines in the end at the middle line here, right here on the center of her face, but the lines for this one don't end right at the center, right? So I wanted to shift that, shift it a bit down, because I saw I could do that, because the center of the face is actually here, right? Or the center of the panel is actually here, and I was trying to align it with the face. All of that on purpose. All of that, like me just trying to do better. And you can see that, like, this is a direct example. It's a 1-for-1. So remember, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And I redid this panel because there was a story problem. Like, I needed this cape on the ground, so the cape needed to come off here, right? on the previous panels, and I will lead into that. Yep, page 44. And wait, that's not right. Yeah, this is 44, and we end at 45. Yep. Left page is odd. So let's get back to. Let me bring back OBS. So we have this panel, strange panel. You're looking top down, right, at a major hopping on a couch, and there's some poofing coming off from all the dust, I'm sure. And this panel is really strange too. It's kind of. I was going for like different perspectives, right? I was all from the previous pages. I was thinking, okay, let's shift the perspective. Let's not look at things like directly at the audience, but let's change how the audience views things. In this case, I just started picking strange angles to look through, and you get these strange shots of from the feet, from the face, from eagle's eye point of view, and I started thinking, oh, I might be going a bit too crazy with this. So I went back to just looking at the face from the front. Also, this does not work. Do not cut your speech bubbles like this. This is awful. Because the words are kind of like doing this thing where it's getting split by Barbara's head. And I'm like, oh no. This is not the way to do it. I would not do this now. But obviously, I did this because I thought it was going to be cool. And you learn from experience. This does not work at all. It just gets cut right in the middle. It does not look good. This panel I would actually redo too. I would move Barbara's head right here and have Major be the center of the panel instead of Barbara, right? So since Barbara would be in the middle here and then Major, but instead shift it over here and then Barbara's head over here, right? But yeah. We have a very quick sequence. Here, then here, then here, then here, then here, and then here. Right? Peeking out. And that's how the paneling should go. And we end with Major peeking over her shoulder, curious about what Barbara was talking, right? And, we get, this is attempt at comedy. This is just my humor. Whether or not it lands, who knows? And two sides of the panel, right? Looking inward. Very, very simple illustration, but implies to the audience of look at the center, look deep. Because if they're looking at something, they're supposed to be looking like this, right? If they're looking like this, right, and their bodies are doing this, it implies you're supposed to look at something here. Of course, what you're supposed to be looking at is actually here. But I wanted to have this text as the focus. And of course, you read top down. So yeah, you have Major with her, what's this? Barbara's like, for you, what's this? And apology for scaring you at first. I'm not sure what you experienced, but I can still emphasize. Also, this needs to be redone because I did not white it out properly. And hopefully I can do something with this page. I do like the composition of the page, right? I like how the composition of the page is. But look at those smudge marks. Look at those little smudge marks because I messed up here. Right here. But yeah, I'll have to deal with that in the future somehow. But yeah, it's a very simple page of just them talking back and forth. And this will be dealt with in the sense of I wanted to evolve this type of talking back and forth because when I read manga, I get really bored when there's just text on the page. But I know it's all like you need to have text on the page to convey something, especially in manga. So how do you make reading fun? And in this case, I kept it kept it simple, kept it vertical, kept the art aligned with it, right? And it's all to make it easy to read. So you're not, in this case, I was trying to make not just the page fun, but like I just tried to make it less painful to read through it, I guess. Right? So you get through it as fast as you want. And, they have the back and forth, and Barbara says just open it. And in this case, this is the after of that. And, you have Barbara walking away this way. Major's looking down because they may be looking into the page here, but we're looking on the opposite side of the table now, right? We're over here looking. Just fun perspectives and just a lot of paneling. So now we have this little panel. This is just right here. This is just for emphasis. And it's a thing. And you get an alleyway or you get a sidewalk. And if you have any questions about where this is or why this is actually a real life photo, just me trying to draw it. I know it's really strange. In reality, when I was taking this photo, when I was trying to recreate the photo too, I realized, man, my art does not hold up. And back to the question of like, my art skill is not doing the justice for the story. This is like really when it really hits home and it shows the audience, my art's not really good, but I'm gonna try my best. And this is one of those panels that I'm like, it started biting me in the butt here, and I'm gonna go to the next. I love these panels. These are very simple panels, but I'll get back on that topic when it shows back up. So we'll shelve that for now. Let's see. So I wanted to try something here, and the paneling is a before and after shot, right? But in one single panel, right? One single panel holds a 1 and 2. In this case, it's actually 1 and 2, right? She's going upwards. It's the opposite, right? What I could have done, since we're supposed to be going top down, right? Top down. I could have shifted the perspective from behind Major's head and have her head over here and the box over here, right? Being flung this way, right? So I gotta fit the vertical paneling better. And I actually kind of think that would have done a better thing. But this is my learning experience of I'm kind of fighting the reader in a sense here by accident, and this was not on purpose. Remember, you're supposed to read top down, right? Right to left. In this case, the paneling tells you you're just reading top down, right? There's no split panels here horizontally, right? No split panels horizontally, unlike here, right? But the action doesn't really imply that, because Major's taking her hand in a sense because you're reading top down, right? And then you're doing this, which is really weird because you end here then on that perspective, and then you have to hop back down here. But I wanted to try it. This is just me trying different things and figuring out what really works and what doesn't. And in this case, don't fight the top down thing, right? I know you'll want to, but if you follow the flow of the page, it makes sense of we end at the bottom, not end back up top, right? So I love this panel. It doesn't work. It just doesn't, because we're going this way. So the shoebox cover is drawn away by Major, right? And holy light, she sees into the box and she sees shoes. And in this case, she has her Shangri-La moment. She sees very fun things, and you have a sidestepped Buddha out here. Which is just staring at Major like, what is happening? And that, I believe that was not on purpose when I was doing that. This just came out this way, where this Buddha is just like on the side, just staring at Major, and I find that really funny. That I just naturally came to poking fun at my own story, even when I was just doing stuff, because the Buddha in the back is like, what? It's like, what? What is happening? Huh? Well, every other Buddha is like looking down in respect, right? Well, this kind of not too. And then Major's looking down. And it's just fun things that kind of just happen. And I actually like the story better for that. So I don't think I will ever redo this page. But there are faults in this page. There are grave failures, right? This is going up when the page is supposed to be going down. This guy's just standing out for no reason when it's supposed to be like all of their sights are supposed to be like this, right? And then all staring down, right? But yeah, and praying. And then this is a reference. If you get it, cool. If you don't, that's fine. Also another reference. If you get it, cool. If you don't, it's fine. But yeah, hopping on to the next page of Barber, and he's just like done with Major. It's like, I don't know what you're doing, and she's not dead. She just won't pick up her old stuff, which happens in a divorce. I am a deeply from experience. I know this, so just take my word for it. Things happen. So, and then you get this. It's like Major not caring. It's like, well, more for me. I don't like this impact panel. Like you see this, the impacts text speech, right? It's supposed to it's supposed to imply something happening, right? More oomph than just a regular speech bubble. And in this case, I didn't do it very well. So in the future, I learned that don't do this. Don't have, the sharp angled lines for the impact text box just for no reason. I just did it here because I thought it would look cool, and it just doesn't work. It's like, oh. So learning from my mistakes. And then this, I really like this panel because it's kind of, this whole panel here feels like a panel within a panel, right? And in reality, you're just looking at a top-down view, right? From Major's eyes down at the shoes, right? Because Major's right here. She's looking downwards, right? And you're looking from Major's point of view. And, of course, mustache. Very interesting. I mentioned this earlier, I'll mention it again. The whole character is encapsulated by his mustache. And that's how you know who's talking. Because of this little thing. Which is great. So at least someone's going to put it to some use. She was always the giant hoarder. And you have this framed, and then you have this frame. I love the composition of these pages. The little tidbits here. This does not work. And that's about it. And we have this. Another reference. Lots of references, but I will not go into what reference it is to spoil anybody. If you get it, you get it. And if you don't, just ignore it. So now we get into the point of... Oh, right. I was still messing around with perspective here. So, bigger, smaller. And then weird shots of the ground. Oh, no, this was actually leading in. Okay. So, right, it's like this. That's how the space goes, right? And I was trying to fill the space on these horizontal panels better. And this is how I ended up filling them in. I just tried to make Barber bigger and Major smaller. And I don't think that really came across right. So, problems with that. Also, I want to mention whiteout, not whiting out stuff because I didn't use actual proper whiteout. So, oh boy, this does not look right. And I wanted to talk about this actually. Let me talk about the failure in art that I want to talk about earlier. So this is the perfect opportunity to talk about failure in art because this is the problem that I had with this. So this panel leads into this panel, and then this panel will lead into the next page. But basically, this is the this is the before, this is the before, and this is the after, right? But I didn't really do this right. Where I have failures here. I have the sign is kind of like to the offset. You have footsteps. You think that like I'm pointing at Major's feet here, but then I'm doing this thing where something's happening here. So it's a confusing perspective of what's happening here. Is Major walking down the street? Maybe. This was a very confusing way of telling the story, but I was trying to do this thing where I was trying to lead into another character showing up, right? So in this case, I should have a shadow here, right? And I should have shaded this in kind of like to tell this thing where kind of implied that something else is happening in this perspective. Because these two panels are in the timeline of how things are happening, right? If this is the beginning and this, right, this is the beginning, right, and this is the end, right? Or in this case, if you're looking at manga, this is the beginning and this is the end, right? Because we read from right to left in manga. The continuity is something else is happening tangentially, and in this case, this is where it starts. And it will make more sense in a little bit when I explain it, but just know that this is step 1. This would be step 2, right? And I did not do it very well, where I kind of confused myself when I was making this. I was like, oh. But I know I'm being very vague. I was trying to introduce Karen here, right? And this is her first panel when she's introduced. This is her second panel when she's like continued to be introduced. And it's a way of trying to introduce a character without showing them first. And this is supposed to do that. And I was supposed to add a shadow here, but I didn't do that. So you kind of, as the reader, don't see that. What's the word I'm looking for? That setup. That's the word. So I was trying to set up something here and then continue that setup, but I didn't do it right. So a failure on my part. But yeah, let me go back to 47. Nope. 48, 49. Yep. So 48 here, 49 here. Perfect. And now you get here, right? So this would lead to this, right? This end panel would be step 2 again, right? And this would be step 3. And I didn't really do it well. So that's why I came off confusing. Because too many things are happening on these pages, right? I'm trying to introduce a new scene. In the previous thing, I just shoehorned it in. And I tried to introduce Karen that way. Does not work. Do not try that with the limitations of art that I had. My art wasn't strong enough to give this introduction its proper place. And it goes back to the idea of my art skills not doing the story justice. This is the defining moment for me of me realizing, like, just bold face, my art's not good enough for the story that I set out to create. But I'll have to get better. And this is page 48 of all things. So I write deeply dab smack in the middle of the story. Goodness, like there wasn't a better time for it to happen too, because the best time for it to happen was right in the middle of the story of me realizing I still have another half of the story to like draw, and if I'm gonna do better, I have to do better. So this was one of those points of realizing failure, but seizing victory within failure is understanding why I failed and understanding that maybe step 2 was bad, step 1 wasn't very good either, but having step 3 be way better was wonderful, right? And in this case, failure, step 3. But yeah, those can be changed in the future. I'm still still thinking of if I want to remake those panels, but I think they're. Well, I really want to keep them up in a sense, because having these streams and talking about this gives rise to understanding when I'm trying to create things, right? I can show to others, you're gonna fail, right? And I'm trying to seize victory in this case through my failures, and showing to other people of take it as a lesson of this did not work, and I still tried to do my best with things that didn't work. You can do it too, right? And in this case, hopefully it makes sense. But yeah, I did have a vision for it. It just didn't come out exactly the way I wanted it to, right? But yeah, so again, start top right, this way, this way, this way, this way, and then here, I love this panel where Major's just drawing. And remember, where you cut a panel is super important. And in this case, below this line would be a nude Major, right? Because she's not wearing the shirt anymore. But it's cut off where you can only see her armpit. And I'm like, that's on purpose. She's nude under here. You don't get to see that because I cut the panel just perfectly. That's on purpose. You don't get to see the good bits. I'm sorry. But you guys see her dressed up now. And so put on the other shoe, toss the shirt, put on new outfit, Major calling Barbara a dork. And then we get the continuation of step 2 to step 3, right? But yeah. And then we get this bit. Oh, this part. And I absolutely adore this thing. This is a way of framing, and it comes from. I was trying to take inspiration from the manga that I do read, and at this point, I was reading Witch Hat Atelier, I believe it's called, and Witch Hat Atelier accents their panels very beautifully, almost like it's a painting, and I tried imitating that. I was trying to imitate that while keeping in line and consistent with my own story. And in this case, the way I combined it was, okay, let's have Major look in the mirror, and let's have the mirror be accented, right? Yes. So it looks like a painting in a sense. And at the same time, it won't look out of place because it's, you can accent a mirror, right? You can make it all pretty. But in this case, it still flow, like that idea fit perfectly of, I'm going to accent this panel, but it doesn't look out of place. Because Major's looking at herself in this case. She's looking at herself after, she has her makeover. Oh, hold up. She's had her makeover, and she's dressed up in a new outfit. This is the perfect time to do it. And this was set up probably a couple pages before this. But in this case, I think it turned out really well. And the framing is not very pretty, I know, but the idea that I was trying to get at, I hope it came across. Of I wanted these straight bordered panel lines to have a little more flourish, right? Just like the manga that I read. And I'm sure the manga artists for that series, oh boy, they thought of a lot of different things that I cannot implement, but I love this idea, so I took inspiration from it. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Okay. So, and we have not major barber looking up at something here, right? And it's supposed to be the shirt, right? Off panel, because if you turn the page, he is here putting it up, right? He's here putting it up, and this is just a continuation of that, right? There's just a continuation of that panel over here. But yeah, there's a lot of consistency here that I had to continue, and it almost feels like to me, when you look at it, it's almost like it's every 5 seconds has passed in between these panels, right? 5 seconds, 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 5 seconds. And that's the rhythm of how the paneling goes. And you have to decide that of how much time passes in between here. This deadness, this in between, this part right here, right? I believe the white space is truly just as important as what's in the actual panels, because it tells a story properly. Oh boy. I may have to stop at the 2 hour mark again, but don't worry, I will pick another day and I'll stream again. So hopefully that comes across. But yeah, where am I? Okay, right here. So Barber's looking up, and we see him looking up in this panel in the background, and we see Major looking back at Barber. So all three of these panels are very interesting because we're looking from Major's eyes, right? Perspective, looking back at her, and we see Barber looking up at his own thing, which most people do, and you see him just like chilling there. Major looking back, and then them coming together again, right? It's a storytelling way of, okay, separate. She's looking at herself. He's in his own world. Major turns back at them, and they're back to talking each other face to face. Yeah, you just see this in real life all the time. People stuck in their own world. And somebody talks, and then they talk to each other, because you don't want to always talk to somebody while they're focused on something else. All right, that is on purpose, and I had that in mind. Also, this text bubble is very crowded. I didn't know what to do besides remember when you're making a story, sometimes the relative space within a speech bubble is not enough to fit your text. Keep that in mind. Right? And then both of them turn to the center of the panel. Right, remember, this is the center. And if the center's here, and then you look up below, and it's the door. And then you have Karen. Right? And in this case, alright, this is the lead-in from here. Right? Here to here. She gets her own intro panel. And so we have here to here. And obviously references, and just what the heck is happening? WTF, what's happening? And just continuation. So we go from here's Karen to space, this, then this, then this, then this. So yeah. So now we have 52, 53. So let's see. So we have interesting stuff here. I've cut this bubble in half. Whether or not that makes any sense. I was trying to go for a continuation thing where Major is here, right? Off screen. She's off screen here, right? She's off screen here. She's off screen here. That's we're looking for Major's eyes in all of these panels from 1, 2, 3 to 4, right? And then we end on Major's face, right? I don't know whether or not that made any sense. Where there's supposed to be like quick back and forth, but I'm trying to change the rhythm in between these things, right? And this was a step towards that because there's not even 5 seconds between these moments, right? They're very, very fast. In this case, right here, right, to here, to here, to here, to here happens within the span probably of, there's only 1 second between this. There's only 1 second between this, and there's only 1 second between this, and another 1 second between this. Is the changing of the rhythm. Things are going a bit faster now, right? And this is the first page of, things are happening kind of in real time, right? As you're looking back and forth. And then it goes to this, and then Major looks at this. She grabs it really fast. She aims, right? And I wanted to get that across. There's a change in rhythm sometimes when you're reading stories, and you have to imply that, and you can't just tell the audience that, right? And in this case, this is the start of it, because you see Major just looking back and forth like very quickly, and it tells the audience, oh, she's, her eyes are literally darting back and forth, right? In this case, it's just to show to the audience things are happening at a more minute level now. So, yeah. Let's go to page. Where am I? This. I'll probably end on page 60, and I'll continue the rest on another time too. But yeah. Oh, actually, I can end soon because my voice is actually giving out again. But I think I got through a lot actually. So let's see. Let me bring back the OBS. So continuation, like this is just 1 second after the previous page, right? And then in between here is another second, right? And then you can see all the way going in, and then I like this a lot. I use the door itself as a kind of stop gap in a sense. It's kind of like the middle of the frame here, right? Just like the top here. So instead of having this, I quite literally have the door there. And very fun perspective of us looking at like us. So, there's the inside, there's the outside, right? And it's being cut in half because of the door. Fun perspective shots, and just me trying different things. And you see her hitting the ground, and you'll see me do this. I did this earlier, right? But I'm going to show it. Let's see. This is kind of this last panel. Let me see if I can find it. Is similar to this. So I had Major's head in the top right corner, and Karen's head is in the top right corner, but Major's head's down here, and Karen's head is in her own panel. I'm trying to emphasize different things here, and in this case, why I didn't follow this method into this is because it didn't fit the scene. That's how I felt. I could have did it the same way, right? Where I cut off where the head is, right? Again, and just like added a sub panel. But I didn't really want to redo that within the literal same manga because it's you gotta do new things, and that was what I was kind of striving for, of doing new things. And in this case, well, if I'm going to do new things, I have to try many things and pick one that's better. In this case, there's no sub panel here. There's just a full panel here. But it gives more emphasis of Karen crashing on the ground and then her holding up her hands to her face, right? And just these two panels were, gosh, they're 30-ish pages across, like from, not 30 pages across, but it spans a couple months between these pages, and this is where it leads to, right? So, but yeah, that I was trying to do better from this last panel, and that was one of them. So she's rubbing her face because she got glass in her face, right? From this panel to here. And you see Major going to the ground, right? And this is the continuation here. There's a lot of setup, and there's a lot of setup here, right? From page 45, right? The katana hits the ground. It's only picked up now. Chekhov's gun, Chekhov's katana. And there's a lot of interesting callbacks really, really quickly coming all at once, because this hits the ground at 45, right? We only get it back at 55. So 10 pages later, there's so much happening in between those 10 pages that the reader's not going to remember sometimes. But stories sometimes are not easy in some sense of the word to understand. But I wanted rereadability to be added into this story to some degree, and I'm not sure if it came across properly, but this was the original setup for this scene, right? So I'm doing like multiple timelines here of where is the next setup gonna be, and where's the next follow up gonna be, right? And in this case, this was 10 pages later, right? And that's a long time in manga. So back to 54. So yeah, this is the follow up to that small sub panel, and Major looking down at the floor. For its worth, flashback panel. One of the more interesting things that I've tried doing is this page, and I don't know if it came across correctly, but there's a lot of imagine timelines, right? If this is the if this is the timeline, right? Lots of things start at different times, right? Like if this is the beginning, right? And then lots of things come collapsing all together at one point, right? So the katana was set up like 10 pages ago, right? So let's say it's here, and then you had Major being bullied is here, and then you had Barber meeting Major is here, and then you had something else happening here, right? And all of those convergence, right? All of those converge to this panel right here. So then we could see this page right here. So if this panel was set up 10 pages ago, right? These two panels right here were set up. And I'm gonna go back, way, way back. To right here. And this was 27 pages ago. Or not 27, it's 28 pages ago, right? Because we're looking at the back of Major's head. I mean, Barbara's head and the side of Major's head. But we get this frame too. And that's what I'm getting at. There's everything converged on this page, and that was all on purpose. It's just the way storytelling goes, right? All lines go until you reach this, right? They all collapse together to give this effect of, oh, this is the convergence of all those little plot points that are being set up. And it leads to this. I guess everyone has bullies. And it's just Barbara being shocked, right? All of that to say, or all that set up just to have this one panel. And it leads to this, right? Leads to page 56 of Major running out the door with the katana in her hand and just flicking her finger to get the katana out. We have our antagonist of the story wiping her face, right? Also the splatters on the panel itself. Love that. I didn't really do that very well, but that's what I was trying to get at. Also, look at these very circular speech bubbles. Goodness. And oh, I will have to call it soon, but my voice is giving out on me, but I hope you enjoyed for what I showed so far. So we have this panel being set up to get to this scene, and we finally get into the versus panel. This is just a little tidbit. This is just a reference, and just a lot of we start at, remember, top right corner and that bottom left, right, on all of these. But we start here, and we're trying to get all the way down here. So let's go hopping. Hop, hop, and then we go here, then we go here, 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 and here. But I was trying to mess around with that idea at this point on page 57, where Karen's looking right, Major's looking left, right? They're being opposed to each other. And if you look at the timelines, it's like, oh, okay. It stops on Major. And then for some reason, Major's in between two Karen panels, right? And then Karen ends up kind of offset on this row at this point. So let's see if I can explain this properly, because I had a lot of thoughts when I was making this page. Karen, Karen, Major, Karen, Major, Karen, Karen, Major, Major, if that makes sense. So there's almost an equal amount of Major and Karen here, where there's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is where kind of the balance shifts to Major, and she literally punches her in the back of the head, right? Because she's Karen's looking this way, and then she turns to look this way because, you know, Major's right here, right? And I'm just having fun with paneling. You can't really do this in any other medium besides manga, and I try to take full advantage of how manga does things, and this is what I came up with. A fun way, like, this is my evolution of previously. How do I make text fun? Like, honestly, it goes back to this. Right? How do I make this more entertaining? Right? Because this is kind of boring. just text bubbles on top of each other. So, I'm doing this and I'm doing this and it's supposed to look fun. It's supposed to make reading fun. And, whether or not that came across, that is up to the audience's judgment. But that's what I was trying to do. I'm trying to make this page fun to read. This is the introduction of Karen and Major, and they're just smack talking each other. I'm trying to make that entertaining. So, continuation of page 58 and page 59. And we will end on 60 and 61 because that's the perfect point to end on. Let's see. So we get to the point of kind of Karen being behind on the panel because she just got bopped in the back of the head. So this is one of the things that I actually don't know how to describe because I was trying too many things at once at this point, where these are supposed to be one-to-one, right? This is exactly happening at the same time, right? You can read this vertically, that and this. But the right side is Karen's side, right? And the left side is Major's side. This and this, right? So all of this, and then let's use squares for Major, right? And it's going down. Things are happening, right? And they're happening in a way where, also, don't do diagonal text. It doesn't work. I learned that the hard way. But yeah, paneling. This is happening at the same time as this, then this is happening at the same time as this, all on purpose. This is just me trying to show a sequence of events back to back really quickly. And I hope that shows. If that made any sense to you, right? I'll get into it in the future if anybody has any questions, but it leads to this. Right? It leads to this page. And for anybody who doesn't know, this is a JoJo's reference, right? But it goes back to the idea of leading the audience into something. And in this case, I was trying to lead your eyes towards the idea of Major being slightly ahead, right? She's literally ahead in her last panel. And this is just a lot of playing with the rhythm of what's happening, right? So if you see this panel, right? This panel is actually with this panel, right? But this panel is on the next page. So what actually ends up happening is there's a staggering of the panels that starts from the page before, right? Right here. So you have Major winning the battle here, right? From just talking. So she's a leg up in a sense with her, her bopping Karen in the back of the head. And you get to the point of, let me go back here. Going here, right? If Karen is behind in that previous page, you get to the point of here, right? She's rubbing the back of her head, but Major's pulling out her sword, and then you have Karen pulling out her thing, and then finishing, throwing away, spike ball hitting the ground, walking, moving forward, and then next page, moving forward, right? And then there's two timelines happening at the same time, but Karen's just a bit slow, and that's what I wanted to get across. Karen's just a bit slow to the uptake, so Major is walking towards Karen, right, with her foot extended, and I know this is a JoJo's reference, right, but I wanted to add my own spin to it, and in this case, I staggered the approach to them meeting with Major slightly ahead in panel, right, and at least it does, of course. And this panel, right, leads to this, right? Leads to the first slash. She gets priority because she's quite literally a panel ahead. And I will get into this next time, and hopefully we'll finish all of this storytelling next time. But I hope you enjoyed. I hope you have. I hope the questions I answered made sense, and hope I'm explaining this manga correctly. I'm deeply, deeply tired. And I don't have the words to describe all the things that I was trying to do when I was creating this manga, but I was trying a lot of things. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the stream. Thank you for showing up for those who did. And for those who are watching afterwards, I hope you enjoy, I guess. But yeah, there should be a third stream. There should be whatever happening after this. But yeah, I'm probably going to take a nap. I am deeply tired, and I should not have done this stream so early. I am very eepy. But I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for those who showed up. Much love. Bye now.